Hello and welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you are in. I'm so happy to have all of you here today. Today, we are going to be talking about using point clouds to create the existing conditions model to help reduce errors. And we have Shawn Herring with us, who will be presenting a little bit about that. He actually created a course in our Customer Success Learning Hub about this topic. He made a couple of courses, actually. He made one on doing point clouds in Civil 3D and another one using point clouds in InfraWorks. And so he'll be talking a little bit about both of those as well as talking a bit about recap. So hopefully this is a topic that you're getting into and it will be very advantageous for you to stick around. I also have on the line with me Adam Riley, who's going to be helping a bit in the background with some Q&A. We are going to switch things up just a little bit today as far as Q&A goes, which I'll talk about here in a minute once everyone gets logged in. But while everyone is logging in, if you could go into the Q&A panel and just type in where you are coming in from. I'd love to see who's here with us and get an idea. So it looks like I have Adam from Houston, Texas, James from Albuquerque, New Mexico, Shawn from Denver, Colorado, Scott, let's see, it's moving fast now. I'm going to have to expand this. A lot of you are joining very quickly, so I'm excited to see this. While we're letting everyone join, we're just finding out where you're coming in from, so glad to have you on. It looks like we have Justin from Edmonton, Alberta, James from Lakeland, Florida, Robert from Connecticut, another Robert from Kansas City. Awesome, glad to have you here. Joseph from Louisville, Kentucky, Mark from Calgary, Alberta. Caesar from LA, Scandra from Toronto, Canada. Nice to have you. Excellent. Well, I'm so glad everyone's here. We will be starting in just a minute. Like I said, we're going to give everyone just a couple more minutes to get logged in, and then I'll start talking about some orders of business, just so that we're all on the same page. So nice to have you, Emma from Toronto, and Dawn from Minnesota. Excellent. Oh, we've got Anna from Spain. Nice to have you on. Let's see if I can scroll through this list and catch a few more that scrolled by me too fast. Dennis from Maine, I don't know if I mentioned you. Bob from Rochester, New York. Jeff from Portland, Oregon. Another Jeff from Seattle, Washington. Steve from Milwaukee. Brian from Indiana. Excellent, excellent. Oh, it looks like we've got Ron from Salt Lake. That's where I'm from. Well, close to Salt Lake anyway. Shawn as well. Shawn's actually in Provo, so in Utah. So great to have you, Ron. Okay, well, I think that's good. I'll go ahead and get started on some orders of business while everyone is still logging in. And just to let you know what we have going on today, and by the way, I've got to make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. Like I said, Shawn Herring will be presenting a little bit on using point clouds to create existing conditions model. He'll show you a little bit in InfraWorks, a little bit in Civil 3D, and he's also got recap open to answer any of those recap questions that come along with it. Just in case we talk about anything futuristic or any new features that might possibly be coming into the software, I just want to share our safe harbor statement and say, please don't make any buying decisions on any futuristic or forward-looking statements that we might make. You know, just because we're trying to get something in the software, it's not always a promise that it will end up in the software at the next release. So just putting that out there. And before we begin, your lines are all muted. That's because we are recording the session so that you can share this with your coworkers, or if you have to drop for any reason whatsoever, you can always come back and rewatch the replay if you would like. But just because your lines are muted, it does not mean that we don't want you asking questions. We really do want this to be an interactive session. We're going to handle questions slightly different today. Because we have so many more people joining our webinars recently, we want to make sure that we get to all of the questions and that everyone's questions get answered. The last session that we had in June for the building engineer meetup, we had about 50 questions that went unanswered because there were so many questions during the session, we couldn't get to all of them. And so I'm going to encourage all of you to go out to the forum that's listed here, and I in fact put it in the chat as well. I don't know if it stays in the chat for everyone, so I'm going to put it in there just one more time. So there it is again. I encourage you to go out to the forum and ask your questions in the forums. And feel free to scroll through those. If you know the answer to some of the questions that other people in the community are asking, please feel free to answer those. Just know not all of the answers that you get are going to be right for you. So just kind of putting that out there to really build a community and help you guys get to know each other a little better, because, even though I work for Autodesk, I don't have all of the answers. And that's why I bring Shawn and Adam and other people on board to help me, because I don't believe in having one big brain. I would rather have one mass brain. So we're going to be a big mass brain today. So, all right. Just to remind you, these are all of the meetups that you have available. If you are in the building engineering industry and do electrical or mechanical design there, you want to attend the fourth Thursday meetup, which is the building engineering. The electrical engineering on the third Thursday, that's more for manufacturing, as well as this mechanical engineering on the second Thursday of the month. So just getting that out there to help you understand which one is going to be right for you. Now, I want to throw this out there. Even though the call for proposals for Autodesk University, the deadline has passed, the proposals are no longer open, I want to invite you to still participate in AU. We're going to be holding our meetups at AU, and as you know, it's all free this year. AU is completely free. It's completely virtual, so no traveling, no need to worry about COVID. You can do it from wherever you are in the world. And we're going to still hold these meetups. I would love to have you guys speak at the meetup, though. Let's change things up a little bit. And so what I'd like to do is do kind of some lightning rounds where everyone has an opportunity to join in and vote for the topic that most interests you. So if you have a topic that you'd like to have considered, send me an email. It's michelle.rasmussen@autodesk.com. And in that email, include any topics that might be workflows that have saved you time and money in your practice. Maybe it's best practices at your firm, or some tips and tricks to help your coworkers and your other people in the community to be better at what they're doing, because that's what this is all about. We want to make sure that all of you are successful, and one way to do that is to share your knowledge with others. So send me that email. The topics are going to be 5 minutes long, so they're just really short 5-minute talks. And what we'll do is at the next meetup, at the August BIM Manager meetup, we will actually vote on the topics that come in, and the top 3 to 4 will be the ones that we pick to be shown live at AU. So I'm looking at the Q&A panel. I see the difference, I'm seeing a question, any structural engineering meetup? So the structural engineering meetup is part of the building engineering meetup until we have enough people in electrical, mechanical, and structural to split those out. That's where those are at the moment. Okay, so with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to Shawn. Shawn, I am making you the presenter. Please let me know if you have any trouble sharing your screen.
Let me know when you can see that screen.
I can see that. It looks good. I'm seeing your InfraWorks right now.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, what did you want to get started here? So I kind of have open here InfraWorks, Recap, and Civil because it kind of takes all three in this role. Recap's a very simple role. As most of you know, you have to go into Recap in order to get that into Civil 3D or InfraWorks. It has to now round trip into Recap. So I'm not going to spend too much time on Recap itself. It's a very simple software, mostly used for kind of importing and exporting. You know, bringing in that LAS file, bringing in your raw scans, maybe registering those scans. But the scan I have today, or the drone flight I have today, is kind of what we'll talk about. So I just wanted to show it real quick, just to show you what the scan data is that we'll be looking at today. This is located out in Denver. This is what the majority of the connected learning courses are built off of, is this project data set. So again, Recap's a simple software, but you have to use that as a mechanism to get it into Civil and get it into InfraWorks. So not going to spend a whole lot of time, but I wanted to show it to you here in the live, the kind of the raw format, because we'll do some processing in InfraWorks, and I want to show you that process data, and you'll see a world of difference after bringing that into InfraWorks. And here in InfraWorks, it's very simple to get that data in there, and it's kind of a process, and Michelle, jump in here at any time, but it's kind of a process in getting it in and then processing the data. So I've kind of queued it up. We don't want to sit here for an hour and watch the computer crunch some numbers. So I'll bring it in, and then I'll show you kind of the finished product, more or less, of that. Just open up this project. So this was just built with Model Builder, just a fairly blank slate that we'll bring that point cloud into. Let me clear the screen here. So you can bring that recap point cloud in. It has to be a recap file, as I mentioned. So in our data sources, you can just simply bring it in. You've got point cloud here. Again, your only options are the RCS and the RCP file. So either way, we'll bring in the RCP. RCS is what we'll export out, kind of a rectified, unified point cloud. So I'm going to bring that in real quick here. And it should read coordinate system, should come in correctly. We're just going to hit close and refresh to bring that point cloud in. So once that's in, you can see it came in. It adds a little bit more reality to your InfraWorks model. I think it kind of helps out in you know, in some of these cases. So once you bring that in, there's a little process to get feature data from. So LiDAR scanning, aerial, you know, terrestrial, all types of LiDAR scanning has been around for 20, 30 years, but the struggle's always been, what do I do now? I've got 50 billion points. What do I do now? How does Autodesk handle it? So last year, I believe they introduced kind of this point cloud module inside InfraWorks. It kind of helps in doing that, kind of helps in cleaning up your data, further classifying your data. So getting rid of trees, buildings, cars, for example, before creating your surface. So this was a good addition to what was already a great product, InfraWorks, and for working with that LiDAR, especially as drone data and LiDAR data is getting easier and easier to get your hands on. Michelle, you still with me?
I am, yes.
Okay.
I just muted myself so that I wasn't interfering.
Do we have any questions? Do you want me just to keep going?
That is, I'm actually trying to find them in the forum, but I see that Neil is asking the question, how about recap integrations with Revit? Does point clouds work there? So
They do. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Shawn. You go ahead.
Yeah, they do. You know, it has to be a recap format again, but you can definitely bring it into Revit. You can. I'm not a big Revit guy. You can cut sections. You can kind of trace, model the walls, doors, windows, that type of stuff. More of a manual process. But without a doubt, you can definitely get that point cloud into Revit with just a couple clicks.
Okay. So Leah's saying you might be planning to cover this, but the headache we always have is dealing with point clouds in the US survey feet and preparing it for Revit. Any best practices or recommendations for scaling?
For scaling in Revit, that'd be a good question for a Revit expert. I would test my Revit abilities, but just by finding the icon to open it. So I'd hate to answer that wrong.
Yeah, and so Lee, I'll bring an expert into the forum and make sure that we answer that in the forum. So if we could, everyone start putting your questions in the forum. And again, I've put that link to the forum in the chat panel so that we can hopefully get more interaction in there. And that gives everyone a chance to answer some of the questions that Shawn or I may not know.
Great. Once you bring that point cloud into InfraWorks, there's a little process to go through. So you can look at point cloud theming. So if you want to see things like classification, elevation, things like that, you can simply just create a point cloud theme. I'll show the theme now. I'll show the theme again once we further classify the data, but it's as simple as just coming over here to the point cloud theme panel, adding a new theme, and you can theme it based on elevation, intensities, classifications. I'll just do a quick classification. Say okay there. And you can see what it does here is it classifies to the best of its ability what a building is, what maybe vehicles or low vegetation versus high vegetation. You can see this bridge, for example, it's probably nothing you want in your surface. And so you can create that classification. So when you bring it into civil, you can either get rid of all that data or you can turn off the objects like the buildings and bridges and stuff that you don't want to create your TIM from, your surface from. So that's a quick classification. Most point clouds should be, most softwares classify. InfraWorks will do it a little bit further. And so I'll show you that when we get into civil. But the step we want to go through here is the point cloud terrain, and then the linear and feature, linear and vertical feature extraction. You have to run this point cloud terrain functionality, the tool, before you can get into the linear and vertical. On this project, since I did it just ahead of time, it took about an hour and a half to run this tool here. So if you're looking for a quick result, you probably wouldn't get it. You'd want to hit that button, go to lunch, go home, something like that. But you do have to run that. So in order to do linear feature extraction, which we'll take a look at, extracting maybe some curb lines or some paint lines or something, you do have to do a first pass through that point cloud terrain. So let me select that point cloud terrain. So it's going to give you this this dialog box. It's going to ask you what point cloud. If you have multiple, we're just going to do the red tail one. There's processing rules, and there is how you want to display your results. These processing rules, if I look in here, there's less detail. There's optimum, which is optimized for site plans like this, where roads, parking lots, so forth, kind of civil related objects. And there's more detail. You can customize it, so you can tell it on all these linear features and vertical features, how high the curb is, minimum allowable density, those type of features that you can edit if you want to make some modifications to it. I'm going to leave these on optimum. Down here is an important section here where it says override the point cloud model. I choose to turn that off. because I like to have my raw data still, my main point cloud. And then I also want to have my processed point cloud. So this will create a new proposal in InfraWorks with a new point cloud that's just the ground data. So it's going to strip that point cloud out of vegetation, buildings. It's going to take those out of that point cloud. And it's going to put that in a new proposal. And you also have the option to export it out. So you can export out just ground and linear points, for example. So where you have an exported point cloud that is just the ground data that you want. And again, not those vertical features that you don't want in your topo. So this is a pretty powerful tool. Again, this takes roughly an hour to do. Once you hit start processing, walk away and go do some other work or something, because it is going to take a little bit of time. I'm not going to hit start processing. I'm going to go to one that's already processed. And I'm going to jump back to recap to show you the process data, and then we'll see if there's any other questions we want to answer here. So let me open up. When you export that out, or when you process that, it's going to create a new folder where you tell it to, and it's going to be called typically point cloud derivatives. This is the, oh, let's hope I have it here. Oh, you know what? Let me open it a different way because it's an RCS file. All right, let me open that up. I'm going to show you the info. So point cloud is going to look the same when I go to classify it. So you can see a lot of this stuff has been taken out. The bridge, for example, right here has been removed from that point cloud. I left the buildings in, but I can turn that off in Civil. But as you can see, it went through and it stripped out trees. It stripped out this bridge, stripped out a lot of the cars in there. It doesn't get 100% of everything. Nothing ever does, but you can see that it started to clean up that point cloud to where when I bring this into Civil, which I'll do in a moment, creating my surface is going to be a lot cleaner, a lot easier to make any changes on that. So it does a really good job. I've used a lot of softwares for the classification. I was skeptical of it in InfraWorks at first, but it actually does a really good job of further classifying and further cleaning up that point cloud.
And Shawn, a question is coming in from Jared. He says, is the classification being evaluated by InfraWorks, or is it predefined on the points in the point cloud?
So if your point cloud is already classified, it's going to further classify it in InfraWorks. If it's not classified at all, it's going to do the initial classification in InfraWorks. So either way, it's still classifying in InfraWorks. It always helps if it's already been classified in whatever product, whatever platform you're using to create that point cloud. But it is processing and classifying further in InfraWorks. Any other questions before I jump back into InfraWorks?
I am looking for some. Let's see.
There were a few. Couple questions. Gunther asked, is it possible to have a point cloud in Autodesk Fusion 360?
I would assume so. It's a great question for Fusion or an Inventor guy, but I mean, it goes into Inventor, so I would assume it would go into Fusion.
And what we'll do, we'll bring that up to our Fusion team here at Autodesk and have them come into the forum and answer that. Great question, Gunther.
I'm going to shut down this model, and I'm going to jump over to one that was processed further. Let me open that up. So this model still has the point cloud. If I look at my proposals up here, when you process that point cloud, you have that option, as I mentioned, to create a new process point cloud proposal. So I'm going to jump over to that process point cloud. If we look at the theme on this one, again, I'll just do a quick theme. Classification, then further classify. Let's just do 0 through 20. Okay. So you can see how much of a difference it makes between the original point cloud that had all those colors, it had the buildings, it had vegetation, and this newly classified point cloud. So the brown is true ground shots. Usually you get some other colors in there for roadway and stuff like that. But you can see it's such a drastic difference between the 2 point clouds. A little bit of leftover stuff there that's easy to clean up in recap or something, or you just exclude it from civil. But a huge difference in the data from one point cloud to the next. Close that down. By having the process point cloud, you can now create linear features on that. You've got the linear feature, you've got the vertical feature. I'll do a couple of this linear feature extraction. It's just drawing lines, so I won't bore you to death by drawing everything, but we'll draw a couple. And then I'll look at the vertical feature extraction. So I'm gonna go linear. Here, there's 2 modes. There's manual, so let me zoom in here a little bit. So let's say we want to draw, let's draw the paint lines, for example. You've got your styles set up. You can set up more styles, so bottom of curve, break line, edge of pavement, paint stripe. There's some pre-built ones within your InfraWorks. So if I choose paint stripe, we'll say okay. Again, the 2 modes. Manual was just exactly what it sounds like. It's manual. You'll draw everything. It's snapping to XYZ. So just snapping to that point cloud. You can draw your features in that way. Automatic at times works great. At times it doesn't. A lot of it depends on your data. Let me choose a break line here. So automatic mode turned on, and you got to kind of get in there and snap to a couple points. And if it works the first time, I'll retire. I quit. So it's going to go find and trace the line to the best of its ability. It's going to go and follow that, in this case, the paint line, but it could be a curve line, could be a break line, it could be a little of anything. Taking a minute, sorry. Live demos. Hey, so you can see that drew the line. It went through the intersection, so we can choose to break the line, but it veered off path up there. But it did do a decent job of at least getting it to kind of a stopping point there. So the 2 different methods, again, kind of a time-consuming. You can either do manual or you can go in there and do the automatic. These at this point are just feature lines, really. They export out as a shape file, but I can split it. So if I wanted to get rid of all that stuff that it shouldn't have put in there, I can split it and create that. And so forth. So again, you could go in and draw your thousands of lines that may be needed either way, auto or manual method. The vertical feature extraction, I'll have to run that again. That's okay, I wasn't going to go into too much detail here, but the vertical feature extraction will go through your site and find things like stop signs, street lights, trees, a bunch of information that you could then replace with a 3D model. So this sign here might be hard for you guys to see on your end, but there's a sign right there. That sign would show up as now an InfraWorks 3D model sign. You can create a lot of different things in there. So pretty much anything you want to model, it goes through and it tries to identify as much as possible, but it usually over-identifies. You end up cleaning up a little bit. But I'm going to jump over to another proposal here. One of the things I really like here about InfraWorks, let's take this line, for example. I can look at it in a cross-section view. So you guys can see here at the top, this cross-section view, and you can see all of these circles here. Those are those feature lines that I've extracted down here at the bottom. So as I walk through this cross-section view, you can see the full view, the full section of what I'm cutting, and then you can see each of the individual lines. And if you want to change something, maybe this is a good example here where it's not quite on the surface. You can adjust that in this cross-section view, and you can place that on the surface. You can adjust it vertically, and you can adjust it horizontally if you wanted to change the location of that feature line. So it's a pretty cool tool. It just allows you to walk down that road wherever you're at. You can look at the features that you've drawn in there just to further inspect how realistic, how accurate did those automatic lines get put in there. You can see for the most part they're pretty solid. Again, that deviates probably from the surface more than you want. So it's just a quick adjustment. Okay. So a couple pretty cool tools. Again, Autodesk has been able to consume the point clouds for a long time, but they really haven't been able to extract the necessary data without a lot of manual process. InfraWorks works out pretty good with the point cloud terrain, the classification, and then further extraction there. Questions on that? I'm going to jump into civil once we're done here.
I do have a couple of people raising their hand to ask some questions. Do you mind if I have them jump in?
Please do.
Okay, so Stefan Varela, hopefully I said your name right. You are self-muted, so I'm not able to unmute you. Are you able to unmute yourself?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I hit the button there. I was working around on screen. I do not have a question though, thank you. Okay,
no problem. If you have one, just raise that hand again. Okay, so Usama Hayes, I've unmuted you. Are you able to unmute yourself? It doesn't look like he is. Okay. How about Lisa? Lisa Johnson, are you able to unmute?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. What question do you have?
Well, this is kind of a general question, but when you cut a profile across a street or through an intersection, say you're going up over a road, when you cut that cross section, I've noticed that sometimes it doesn't show the road down below when you do a profile or a section. Does it show the road down below? Because sometimes I've seen it where it doesn't do that. Like you have this road that you have right here, this intersection, and there's a bridge there. If I have a proposed road down below going across and a proposed road going above, and I cut a section through there, I'm not seeing the road below. Does that make sense?
It does.
And I'm wondering if I was doing something incorrect and why it wasn't showing it. Because sometimes that vertical clearance is extremely important when you're looking at profiles and you're going over one road to another road.
Yeah, definitely. let's, I don't have, in this data set, I actually don't have all the info. Let me.
And the reason I asked that question is because our office is pushing more the MicroStation, what do you call it? Because it does that, where this one didn't. And so they said, well, maybe we shouldn't be focusing on InfraWorks. We should be focusing on Concept Station because it got that section better.
Gotcha. They're wrong. I'm just kidding. That's something that I wouldn't mind taking offline if we want to look at that. This probably isn't the best data set to look at that, but
Yeah, that'd be.
If maybe send over your info and I'd be happy to spend some time with you and take a look at that. So it seems like that should be an option, should be fine. But let's further explore that outside of this point cloud.
Just post it on the forum.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Okay,
Yeah, that would be great. Okay.
And Michelle
Excellent.
or Adam, if you guys want to send me that info, I can follow up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see. I apologize up front for this name. Rajeshwari, are you able to ask your question? No? Okay, self-muted. Okay, so I think I've hit everyone.
Great.
If you're able to get Civil 3D going now.
Okay. One last thing that I'll mention here in InfraWorks, to get this data out, to export this out, under the point cloud panel, there is export point cloud. And what that exports is, again, the ground grid points only, the linear features. This will export out into a shape file. And then the vertical features will export out to a shape file or a CSV file. Those linear features, there's a function in Civil 3D, you can bring those in. I'm going to not export those just for time's sake, but that's how you can get that data pretty easily out of InfraWorks in the Civil. And then in Civil, let me bring in that point cloud. So again, it has to be recap format, RCS, RCP. So on the insert, there's attached point cloud. And let's bring in, I'm going to bring in both. Let me close this one down first. I'm going to first start with that, the derivative one, the one that has kind of cleaned itself up and it's just the ground shot. So I'm going to bring that in Civil real quick. I'm just going to hit OK. It's beautiful, right? I turn off my hardware accelerator, but for point clouds, you have to have that turned on. Okay. So there is the point cloud. That's the one that's been cleaned up. You can see it's missing for the most part, missing the data. A couple simple things here, just simply creating a surface. So I'm just going to grab that point cloud. Up here on the ribbon, you've got scan color, so you can see the classification in Civil as well. So you can see that one is pretty much classified all as ground. Makes for a easier time cleaning that up. Elevation, scan color, so forth. So you can turn that on and off. One helpful thing is this, let's go back to that, this color mapping option here. If you didn't classify or if you didn't export out just the ground shots, you can still work with it in Civil 3D. Under the color mapping, you can go through and turn off vegetation, high buildings, all that fun stuff in there, and still get the same results. So, maybe you skip that processing portion in InfraWorks, you can still work with that data inside Civil 3D. Just in that color mapping, you turn it off. When you create your surface, it creates your surface with just what is being displayed. So I'll create a quick surface. Create surface from point cloud. I'm just going to call this EG, existing ground. We can do the entire point cloud. So in this point cloud, there is 35 million points, and that's down from probably the 200 million It's quite a bit of points. You don't really need points. You don't really need points that are 5/1000ths of a foot apart. You can make some changes here. So if you want to create this surface based on, say, a 5-foot grid, it brought that 30 million points down to only 570,000 points. You can do the entire point cloud, or you can do a portion of that point cloud. So if I just want to create, maybe my focus area is just this empty lot. Let's just come in here and you kind of just window the area. And there we go. So I'm going to do that again down to 5-foot grid just for time's sake. 112,000 points. Let's hit next. There's some further ground point or non-ground point filtering in Civil. This one's already filtered. I'm going to say no filter. I'm going to create a surface. 110, 112,000 points should just take a few seconds here. You can continue to work as that goes. There we go. So it is done. I'm going to unload my point cloud just from my XREF manager. There's my surface. You can see in here where it had that ditch, there was no points there, so it just kind of filled it in. But you can see kind of a quick way to get that surface in there based on that classified, cleaned up point cloud out of InfraWorks. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to bring in that other point cloud. Let's detach this one. Let's bring in this one. This is the same project, same point cloud, just not classified. I'm going to crop this down. So there's some tools up here, some simple tools, not a whole lot, but I'm just going to crop it down to a small area. Let's just do this portion here. So that point cloud, most point clouds come into Civil 3D pretty high quality. You know, this one looks pretty good. I can get a lot of information off of this. If you don't draw your line work in InfraWorks, you can also do that in Civil. It's a manual way. I'm going to turn on my O snaps, but there's a 3D object snap setting that will allow you to snap to a point cloud and allow you to snap to a node. Excuse me. I'm going to turn those on because what we can do is we can draw a feature line. We can snap to XYZ of this point cloud all day long. So that is a great task for an intern. It's quite a boring task, but turn on your O snaps, your 3D O snaps. If I go to draw a feature line, let me just check my styles here so we can see it. If I go to draw a feature line, I can snap to, you can see that blue thing that pops up. I can do this in a 3D view, I can do this in a 2D view, and I can start drawing in some of my break lines. You can see down there, it picked up my elevation, and it's a manual, very manual tracing process of snapping to that and creating that feature line.
And Shawn, the question came in, when you're drawing these lines, are they coming in 3D?
They are. I'm going to change my transparency here a little bit. A lot. Let's back that up. Yes, when you're drawing those lines, and let me do one more. So let's go create feature line. This could be a 3D poly as well. I'm choosing to use a feature line. But let me snap to, let's snap to this back of trail, I think that is. You can see down here at the bottom, it's grabbing that surface and picking up that elevation. So anything I snap to, it's going to pick up X, Y, and Z from that. That's quick and ugly, but yeah, so definitely it creates a 3D polyline, it creates a feature line. You can add those to your surface as a break line if you want to. Any other questions? That was kind of the quickest rundown you'll get, probably a recap, InfraWorks, Civil 3D all in one.
Yes. Yeah, so there is a lot more than what we just covered here, right? And one of the questions came across was, where is the best place to go learn the full drone to design workflow?
Drone to design, yeah. There's a lot of stuff out there on drones. There's a lot of software out there on drones. We didn't go over in this recap photo. Recap photos an Autodesk product that takes the drone captured data, the images, stitches them together, ties them to your survey control if you'd like, and then kind of spits out a point cloud that you could then go through this process. I don't know if there's a course out there that would walk you through everything from capturing the data to processing the data to bringing that data into the Autodesk products, kind of all of that. I don't know if there's one individual course. There's probably, and I can follow up with some links or something. There's probably several courses that I can send you to look at it. But yeah, I don't know, Michelle. We didn't do a recap photo one part of this connected learning, did we?
We have not yet. That's actually a really great opportunity for us to provide more information. And to come back to that question about, from drone to design, a big part of what you'll be learning when you're working with the drone is how to use the specific drone that you have. So learning how to capture the data using the drone, I would highly recommend you look into, training specifically on your drone. Because every drone can be a little bit different. A lot of them have the same features, functions, but there might be slight differences. So anyway.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good processing software out there. Obviously, Autodesk recap photo. It's fairly simple, though. A lot of people think it's a pretty tough thing to get into. It's not a tough process. It's actually a fairly simple process. Just depends on kind of what you're going for. But we can send some more information on that.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And I love that some of you are posting answers to some of these. Look up an AU class by Joshua Benoist. I believe I said his name right. So thank you for that, ENG3. So JL Hull, I believe, is your name.
And I think 2 years ago, I did an AU class that was called an all new field to finish, which was taking all this data and processing it down through. So there's a lot of information out there. There's plenty. AU is a great place to go and find stuff because it's some good people, some good content.
Absolutely. Okay, and let me look for some more questions here. We've kind of got them everywhere, which I was afraid this might happen with moving to forums. A lot of people are still posting in the Q&A panel, so I'm going to go back to a few of these for just a moment. Okay, so this is why. So Travis is saying, I can't find the place to ask questions in the forum, but my question is, can InfraWorks categorize theme existing conditions in existing buildings like beams, columns, walls, etc.?
No, it cannot. Yeah, it's just looking at, it would probably do it as an overall building and one overall classified object. So it's not going to go through that level of detail. It's a good wish list item, though.
Yes, and Vivek is asking, getting started with recap photo link. I will have to look into a link to share that with you, so I will get back with you on that. Okay, JL Hall is coming back saying that Joshua's class title is Have Insight 360 with your Recap 360 point cloud. He takes a drone capture through Recap to Revit and then into Insight. So great. I love
Right.
that. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so the question's coming in, a follow-up question. I am more interested in learning about handling the data produced by the drone. So you definitely want to take that into Recap. We have about 9 minutes. Do we have enough time to share something on how to bring that into Recap, Shawn?
Into Recap photo? I think what he's asking is taking those images that he's captured and processing it to get a point cloud. I believe that's the question.
Okay, and I can try to open your line. Ederele, I believe might be how you say your name. Let me try to find you in here. And it's for some reason not going alphabetical. Let's see. Ah, there you are. And you are self-muted, Ederele. Are you able?
You did a good job of pronouncing my name.
Oh, good.
Excellent. Yes, I think that that's exactly, Shawn got it right. What I was trying to understand is how do you take the data out of the drone and what do you do with it? And I'm also trying to find the answer that came from the audience about the AU class. Where was that, in the forum or in the chat?
It was in the Q&A, but what I'll do is I'll move that over to the forum for you so that you have that.
And on that drone, the drone portion, so I've flown 600 projects in the last 4 or 5 years. We fly a lot of projects, a lot of earthwork, a lot of big projects. I would love to do a drone only, hint, hint, Michelle, at one of these meetups. I think one of those around drone data, capturing the data, processing the data, I think that would be kind of a cool thing to do. So I'll raise my hand and volunteer for that if you'll let me.
Absolutely. You can always volunteer. It might be hitting you up to create a course for our connected learning experience for that as well. So
it wouldn't take long. It's a simple process. So I think people would be surprised how easy it is to go from being a wedding photographer to capturing data for survey time. So,
interesting.
It's easy.
There we go. So all those wedding photographers out there, they're going to become your coworkers soon.
So I hired one. So
did you really?
I did. He flies great. He does a great job for survey. So
excellent, excellent. All right, thanks, Ederele, for your question. If you have more questions, let's go ahead and throw your hand up. I see Lisa Johnson. You have your hand up. Can you speak with us and ask your question?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Is there a place up on the AU maybe that I have not really worked with point clouds yet, so this has really been fun and interesting. I'd like to do more with it. Is there a place where there's example projects that people can download and work with to, run through this 3 or 4 times and classify things and make your services and play with this before you actually tackle a project?
Absolutely. You can grab this data set that Shawn has been sharing from our connected learning experience in the Customer Success Learning Hub. And I'll make sure that I post that link for everyone again. I've posted it once before, but I'll make sure I post it again. And basically, it walks you through a lot of the things that Shawn showed you, and it has the data set connected to it, so you can download that data set and try it on our data set so that you don't ruin yours.
Yes, thank you.
You bet. Great question, Lisa. All right. I don't see any more hands raised. We have about 5 more minutes. Let me just look through and see other questions. Some of these are just people answering each other's questions. I love it. Thank you for that. Let's see, we've answered that one. Rajeshwari, I'm going to try opening up your line because I'm not quite understanding your question. So let me find you in the participants panel here. And I am so sorry if I said your name wrong. Rajeshwari, are you able to speak with us? It looks like you're self-muted. Maybe not. Okay, so the question that came in, this diagram copy paste from satellite map projection. Let me see if there was another question that related to that to give me more information. And I'm not seeing another one in here. Okay. We'll try to get back with you via email then, Rajeshwari, to see what we can answer there. Let's see. That one's been answered. And Adam, are you still on? Are you seeing some questions in the forum that I have missed?
I am still on. I see one that Vemis asked, can you create or import point cloud regions in InfraWorks so that you can turn them on and off based on your proposal?
No, that's a really good question. That's actually something I brought up because in Recap, you can create a region. For those that don't know, you can create a region, which a region is, think of it as a layer. So you could create a region of trees or create a region of buildings. And in Civil 3D, you can turn those on and off. In Revit, you can turn those on and off. In InfraWorks, you cannot yet. So I'm working with the InfraWorks team on this module over the past couple of years. It's been brought up several times. So I know it's on the list of items to do. So that's a great question, though.
Great. Okay, and I love this JVeal81, and I apologize, I wish I knew your real name, but that's the handle in the forum, is saying, I've used point clouds in Revit in the past, and it's quite easy to link them in just like you would any other link. Bring them in on level 1, and the model. What you need the point cloud can be cut through sections and section boxes. So great, I love that. Thank you for that answer to some of the other questions.
Yeah, and those that want to model their building, model the pipes, you can do some of that in Revit and in Civil, but there's some great third-party add-ons that Autodesk is really nice with that will streamline the production and the extraction of all that data.
Perfect. Okay, here's one from D. Vemis. Is there a file size limit on point clouds to be able to share the InfraWorks project using BIM 360? Do you know what that limit might be, Shawn? I'll have to look it up if not.
I don't know. I haven't run up against a limit, and I've got some pretty big point clouds. I haven't seen a limit, but I like to try to test those limits. So I'll find out. That's a good question.
Okay, great. And can you create import point cloud regions in InfraWorks and turn the visibility on off based on the proposals?
Not in InfraWorks. That kind of goes with that other question about creating those regions, and no, not in InfraWorks currently.
Okay, great. D_Lindsay_BIM is saying the recap files can be linked into Revit very easily. The main thing with recap file is setting up the origin point to match up with the origin point of your Revit file, the X, Y, and Z. I wish there was a little more control in Revit in the recap file like there is in AutoCAD, but recap files can definitely be utilized in Revit. So thank you for adding that. Okay, the question from Lionel is, how would you further manually classify points such as cars that weren't caught automatically?
If they weren't caught automatically, that's where you would maybe, I think the easiest route to go would be bring them back into recap, and you can remove those if you don't want those. You can't you can't grab something and classify it, but you can grab those cars, buildings, or whatever, and add it to a region in recap prior to bringing it into civil. So, you know, with these tools being fairly new to InfraWorks over the last year plus, there's room for growth, and that's a good manual classification would be a good type of thing to bring up. So it's a good question.
Excellent, excellent. I just realized we are out of time. So I do encourage all of you to go out to the forums. Again, that forum link is in both the Q&A panel and in the chat panel. Let's continue this conversation. It's a great conversation that's been started, and a lot of great information from all of you as well as from Shawn. So thank you all for participating, and Shawn, thank you for doing the presentation, and Adam, thank you so much for your help with the questions.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, everybody.
All right. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you at the next meetup. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.